Hey everyone, welcome to Lorecraft, where we deconstruct stories, explore creative perspectives, and dive into the magic of storytelling across books, movies, and games. I'm your co-host, Ava Doe, a gothic romantasy author for the new adult audience.
And I'm your co-host, Donnie, storyteller, designer, and creator of all things sci-fi fantasy powered by coffee. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Lorecraft Creative Podcast. I'm Donnie, and also have my lovely co-host,
Ava. And we are talking about the Enneagram kind of personality types today. So if anyone here doesn't know what the Enneagram is, the reason why we're bringing it up is because it's kind of a personality system that we use for like just us humans in the real world and how we process things. And it boils it down to 9 core types of human motivation. The reason why I like this over something like a Myers-Briggs, which is also another personality typing system, is that I've seen Myers-Briggs change over time for myself as I, go through stress and growth, basically. Like, I think when I was in college, I was an INTJ, and then as a professional, outside influences came in, and I feel like I'm more of an INFJ now instead of an INTJ. So you can change over time, essentially. And it's a slider scale. The Enneagram focuses more on motivation, specifically like core fear and core desire, which I think is some of those nastier things that we don't really talk about, but are essential to building realistic characters. Basically, what am I running from or what am I running to? But more importantly, why am I doing any of it, right?
Yeah. One question I have, because I'm familiar with some of those like personality concepts, as you kind of, go out of primary school and into professional working life, you may get introduced to, you said Myers-Briggs, Personality Plus. So I've only encountered it and prior to us meeting from a business professional standpoint of deploying it in that arena where you're working with different people, like, why is this guy so uptight? Like, because he kind of falls in this sort of like archetype dynamic. So let me understand that so I can work better with him. I can understand myself better. I never really thought about applying that to storytelling and characters and all that. So, kind of how did you get introduced to that? Because that's always fascinating. How did you think about combining the two, taking it from a professional dynamic, but then you're like, hey, maybe I can use this to create characters?
That makes a lot of sense. The way that we have been using it previously, I mean, not previously, but like in a professional setting, is to make ourselves more efficient, work better with other people, and kind of help the bottom line, which might be capital gain at the end of the day, right? Because it's driven by our efficiency and our ability to kind of smooth over miscommunications and work well on really diverse teams. I feel like the reason why I started thinking more and more about it is actually through going to therapy. Going to therapy, you do have to get pretty vulnerable with yourself and why you are doing what you're doing. It's not enough for us to just say like, I get really uncomfortable or triggered in this situation. It's not really as helpful to say, I just get triggered by this, and so I should just avoid any situation I run into. Clowns. I don't know, right? Like it's deeper than like, it's like clowns are scary. Yeah, why are clowns scary? Oh, clowns are scary because like, they have painted faces and whatever. It's like, well, what about that, right? So the deeper you get with therapy, I feel like the better the gain that you have. And a similar situation with Enneagram, I think that the Enneagram isn't focused as much on traits versus it is on like the core reason for why you're doing what you're doing. And usually it's stemmed from something that happened really early on in your impressionable life. So mostly at childhood. So type 3 may have become a type 3, which by the way is more of like a the performer type. Basically the type 3 gets their love or their interpretation of love from doing performance or being the best or being very ambitious or being very showy. So think like Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Everything about her is about ambition and about being the best and about being better than her brother and showing off to her dad and showing off to the Fire Nation and just being a perfectionist. Her wound may have been her mother thought that she was a monster or something like that. And the narrative that she built in her head is, I'm not a monster, I'm perfect, right? I'm perfect, I do everything right. Dad loves me, why don't you, kind of thing. And over time, that inner dialogue that you build early on as a child just becomes more and more strengthened as an adult, where it's like, it is the reason for why these things happened, right? As a type 3, I'm going to speak to this as a type 3 because I feel like I know it really well. In a situation where, like, let's say there's a performance or some sort of like podcast going on, like what we're doing right now, and my friend goes like, oh, do you want to guest star on the podcast, or do you want to be a part of my performance or something like that? If the opportunity falls through, and by the way, I don't know why it's falling through, the narrative that I as a type 3 might come up with is like, I wasn't successful enough, they found someone better, or I wasn't attractive enough, they found someone better. It's a comparison game for the type 3. Whereas like for a different type, they're going to interpret that differently and how to react differently.
Oh, 100%.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because as a self-described type 8, I wouldn't even think that wouldn't even be considered like, no, of course I'm the best. Maybe like they just didn't have their stuff together, or it's like I'm like something that isn't me. I'm not the problem here. They didn't figure out. So it's very, very interesting how those two kind of dynamics combine. And whatnot. So
it's kind of wild.
Yeah. So let me ask this, because I want to learn more, as we go through this collaborative journey of our respective stories with the Piros and yours with Violent Delights. Whose type did you figure out first? Like, do you want to like kind of go into more about, how you applied it to your characters specifically? Like, did you start with Althea first, and then kind of like, how did you figure that out, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask, of how to apply it and who and what, like what made you to make, your main character a certain type versus the other characters? Like what determines that process?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I think it's going to differ from artist to artist, to be honest. But in my opinion, I knew that I was going to try to create Violent Delights with some pretty hard to stomach topics. I find that like the storytelling that we're doing is just talking about real world problems, real human problems, just masked in a fictional setting, right? So it makes it easier for us to digest it, for us to kind of process these topics and stuff. And so I knew I was going to put the main character and some of these other characters in tough situations and potentially have some things that triggered them or was actively traumatizing for them. So I thought about like what those triggers were and how the character might react, and then who would have the most like violent reaction to it, if that made any sense. Like, who would this be the absolute worst day for? And so after I thought about like the scenarios that I wanted to kind of like place in there, as in what kind of real human problem do I want to talk about? For me, it's like sexual abuse and rape and being powerless or something like that, right? And then I looked at the Enneagram, and then I thought about who I was really familiar with and who in my opinion would react really violently to that. And I think each type would have a different reaction to it, and maybe even more adverse than what I've come up with for Althea. I'd be curious to see what the readership thinks Althea is after reading it. I don't know if I'm going to talk about what she is, more like let people make their own determination. But I went ahead and I selected something that I felt pretty comfortable with in understanding like how this type is going to react, what's going to trigger them, and chose that for the main character, because I felt like they were going to grow the most from beginning to end, starting there.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, ever since you've put the thought into my mind about using Enneagram and looking more into it and refreshing my understanding of it, all I can think about really is the dynamic between, we can put up the counter for billions, but I feel like Paul Giamatti's character, Chuck Rhodes, is the U.S. attorney, and Damian Lewis's character is Bobby Axelrod. It's like the perfect kind of like clash of, you can distinctly see like what their Enneagram types are, like why that natural tension kind of like works so well. And I'm like, man, I just think they do that like so wonderfully in the show.
Yeah.
100%.
No, I really like that you're bringing that up, because I think when we look at works that we enjoy, I think we can start picking through some of these personality types. So you just brought up billions, and I do want to do an analysis of it. But to give people a baseline as to what the 9 types are, and I'm not going to go very deep, mostly what their core fear, and then a character example. I hope y'all have watched Avatar: The Last Airbender. If not, I'm going to tell you all these characters, and you're not going to know who they are, but then you should go and you should watch it. Seriously stands the test of time. And I think we're going to do an episode on Avatar: The Last Airbender in the near future. But 100%. Type 1 through type 9. Your type 1 is the person that is labeled the reformer. Their core fear is being corrupt or wrong. And this would be like a Katara. She's solely driven by justice, morality, and doing the right thing, even when it's hard. And I think it's really interesting to see her move from unhealthy to healthy, like towards the end when she confronts someone that was really traumatic and very impactful in her life, what she ends up doing at the end of the day as a type 1. I think she still chooses the path of righteousness versus a different typology might have actually just like pulled the trigger, so to speak. A type 2, their core fear is that they fear being unwanted or unloved. When they don't feel like they're providing a necessary service to people, then they think that they are useless. And so this might be Uncle Iroh. He's always warm, nurturing, and always helping others grow, even at a personal cost. And I feel like we see that really clearly with Iroh and Zuko. For the people that have watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, you can see how back and forth that character arc is for Zuko, and how Iroh is like just nonstop the rock that's behind him, like helping him even at personal detriment.
What's the name of the type 2? Do you know off the top of your
head?
The
Helper.
The Helper? Okay.
Yeah, the Helper. Type 3 is the achiever or the performer. They fear being worthless or being a failure. So they basically tie output and trophies and like things that they can show others as tied to their core value. So this would be like Azula, obsessed with perfection, power, external success to mask like what's going on internally, and she thinks that this is why people are surrounded by her. Surround her. This is why people help her. It's because she is amazing. And then type 4, the individualist. Their core fear is not having identity or significance, right? Like just fading into the background. Zuko is a really great example of a type 4. The entire character arc for this character is like, who am I? Am I like the potential Fire Lord that, ruthless Fire Lord that my dad is? Or am I someone who's helping the person I thought was my antagonist the whole time? And my favorite thing to say about the type 4, I'm not going to boil all type 4s down to the hot take. Ready for a hot take? The type 4 is probably the person that's wearing those pimple stickers that are like a badge. Like it's the fucking star on your face. It's the smiley face. Yeah, like those zit stickers, you know what I mean? Like okay. There's like there's zit stickers where you can put like a
fake
colloidal patch. Yeah, a colloidal patch on your pimple. For the most part, like people want the ones that'll blend into the skin, right? It's like the same skin color, or it's clear or something like that, or it's at least matte so it doesn't shine in the light. A type 4 is more likely to use like the flashy one, which is like literally a sticker like on their face, like a star or like a smiley face or whatever cute shape it is, because they're like, well, the pimple is there, but I'm gonna accessorize it like
this
it's always supposed to be there.
Thing, because I've never heard of that. So this must be like a particular part of the world where people exhibit that behavior. I've like never seen anyone do that or heard that.
It's a thing. It's absolutely a thing, and I love it. It's more like basically the type 4 is like the bleeding artist, right? Like they know there's a flaw about them, but they're like, but it's a part of me, right? Like look at this. Look at this aspect of me that's not perfect and enjoy it. I enjoy it. This is me. Their individualism is very important to them. A type 5 is the investigator. So they basically fill their fear is being helpless or incapable. So they fill that gap with all the knowledge of the world. They might turn really inwards of themselves and be like, until I understand everything, like I understand nothing, right? Like there's so much that could hurt me, that could hurt you, and it's because of lack of knowledge. So this might be Piandao, who is Sokka's sword master, who has basically like mastered sword mastery inside and out. They're wise, they're thoughtful, they highly value knowledge and being able to think through problems and being independent that way. A type 6 is the loyalist. They fear lacking support or security from others around them. So Sokka, although he is like actually a really standout character in Avatar: The Last Airbender, he tends to be anxious. He's very doubtful. It goes better for him if the rest of the crowd is also cheering him on and on his side about what idea to do next. A type 7 is the enthusiast, basically the person that is trying to avoid pain or limitations at all costs, right? Like they don't want to deal with the problems that are in front of them. They just want to go escape and be somewhere else. So Aang, I think, starts out a lot like this. He's very optimistic. He's avoiding pain. He's trying to seek fun and lightness despite like the looming war and everything that's going around him. And I feel like it's really good for him as like, you know, a 13-year-old airbender type who's just literally broken out of ice, as you start to understand his childhood and how fun it was at the air temples versus what he's dealing with today. It makes a lot of sense that he's trying to escape back to like, let's just go back to the way it was, and I don't want to deal with this, and let's just leave, right? Oh, a type 8, the challenger. Donnie is a quintessential type 8. So the core fear here is being controlled or being weak. Toph, wow, you got such a cool one. Toph, earthbender, fiercely independent, confrontational, resist vulnerability or dependence, basically trying to avoid being put into a corner by other people and needing to be like in control, essentially. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I honestly would have thought Toph was more so was the type 7, based on the description of like Toph could kind of float between
I could see that too.
Both those two dynamics. Yeah, for like
I
a
can
type
see
8,
that too.
sure, yeah. And I think it stems kind of, without getting too deep into my own like psychological pedigree, you know, it kind of the dynamic is, for me at least, you know, it's about, you know, the freedom of expression at the highest order. It's like I want to be able to self-actualize at the top of that pyramid, and anything that doesn't help get me there, it's like it's a fight, and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's at least like my take on it, because again, all these types have like unhealthy attitudes. So the worst position you want to be is like the control freak who is just destructive.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not creating anything. Like if you're gonna channel that energy into being a control freak, it needs to be towards, you know, enlightening everyone else to also take stock of their own self-agency.
Yeah.
So I'll leave that little bit of philosophy there, but yeah, go type 8s and go Toph. Toph is like my favorite, pretty much.
Toph is kick-ass, and I think you bring up a really good point. The thing about these Enneagrams is that, and very much like other personality types, we have a little bit of all the 9 types within us, and I haven't gone over type 9 yet, but basically there's a little bit of them in all of us, and they just manifest in different ways. I think that we have some primary ones that are really strong for us, and then others that are a little bit further back. So Toph could definitely be like type 8 challenger is her primary, followed closely by type 7, the enthusiast, which is like, I want to go and escape these problems. It's time for me to just like put up these walls and just be in my own world instead of dealing with what's happening in front of me, which is like a very difficult problem. And then last but not least, we have type 9, the peacemaker. Their core fear is conflict and disconnection. So this might be like a Ty Lee, which is a great example, especially about how she reacts to the way that Azula and Mai are around her. I fondly remember the scene where like she is in a traveling circus troupe having a great time. Azula finds her on the road and asks for a private performance, right? And basically Azula starts wreaking havoc on Ty Lee's performance, setting the net on fire, releasing all the animals, and just generally making it a very dangerous and unsafe situation. And at the end, instead of like turning into someone who goes like, I want to get away from Azula. I want to fight whatever it is that she is trying to put me into, which is bring me back into the fold. Ty Lee says, okay, well, I think the universe said that I shouldn't be doing the circus because it's really dangerous, and so I'm going to go with you. So basically like conflict avoidant, going with the flow, trying to keep the peace even within chaos.
Yeah. What type do you think is my...
That's a good question.
Because she's so nonchalant and I won't say conflict avoidance, but she's just so indifferent.
Yeah. But I also feel like she's kind of indifferent. She's kind of going with the flow, but she's kind of whatever. It's because it's not like draining her energy to do something that she's just going with it. But I feel like she is someone who can stand her own.
Yeah.
And I also don't feel like she's running from something. It's more like it's presented in front of her, and so she's gonna do it. So I don't feel like she's got her own like really strong compass of like running from something. So I don't feel like she's an enthusiast. What do you think she is?
I would have said the same, type 7 enthusiast. Is that correct?
You think she's a type 7 as if she's running from... Okay.
Yeah, I would say enthusiast. She's lackadaisical about it, but she doesn't have like the sanguine personality of it. But
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
so she's kind of like going with the flow. She's avoiding the things.
Yeah, but just in a very nonchalant way, where I feel like Ty Lee is more so she's avoiding, but she's bubbly about it.
Yeah.
So it's very...
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I might also say that she might be like a type 9, like where she is going with the flow. I think we're basically talking about the same thing, but like, what is the core motivation, right? Which is such a good example of this. Both Ty Lee and Mai go with the flow to work with Azula for the most part when she calls on them in later seasons. But I think the reason why that they do is like it looks a little bit different. Ty Lee is happy and bubbly, and she is trying to go with the flow, but Mai is also trying to go with the flow, but with like a different persona, right? Like she's really kind of numb and emotionally reserved, appears apathetic, and maybe like suppressing what's going on deeper, just for the sake of like keeping the peace around Azula. So I could also see that she might be like a type 9, like Ty Lee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, another question I have is, so we talked about the kind of the basis of all these 9 archetypes. It centers around core fears and core desires, and sort of that internal conflict. We've mostly talked about heroes. How do you look at that towards, let's say, villains or antagonists, etc., or maybe even secondary characters and things like that? Do you kind of see it as like a soup? I look at things as storytelling almost as like Lego. So you're picking up pieces and trying to assemble the best, figurine you can make. So I don't know if that's how you see Enneagram, and when working on these other non-main character dynamics, or what's your approach there? How do you think about that?
I 100% will use Enneagram for most of the front-facing characters, and definitely for the villain. I think it's like it just adds a little extra layer as to what's going on and what the inner motivation is for these people, because it's really rare for us to just know why we do what we do. And I think subconsciously, as humans, like digesting these works, we start to resonate with these characters, especially if they're ugly characters, like your villains and your less savory characters, and even the actions that your main character might take that are really kind of nasty, and we don't think they're morally right from a societal perspective. If we are able to kind of tap into that core fear and core desire using the Enneagram and kind of layering those inner motivations and external stakes, we kind of begrudgingly get into this situation of like, I don't like what this character did, but I understand why they did it. And that's what I love to get towards with any sort of villain, right? I think we talked about villains in one of our previous episodes, not as like the core focus, but we started talking about it. And there's a reason why audiences will resonate with an Ultron, right? It makes some sense. Like, why do we think that Thanos is a good villain versus other villains that might be a lot more surface level? I'm doing evil to do evil.
Well, what's
I
funny,
like. Mm-hmm.
one thing, because it came to mind that's funny too, is like when you're younger, you see the world presented as one way, and then when you have older and good experience, you're like, you know what? Maybe they weren't the bad guy after all. Maybe they make a lot of sense. Because like when you're young, you're like, oh, he's clearly is a right and wrong. Like it's very binary. And sometimes there are things in life that are strictly binary, like day and night. And there's also like shades of gray between everything. So it's like funny how like our perception, and this could be a whole other episode about like perception, like how humans perceive the world, because there's like tons of science into that whole field about, you know, what's actually happening versus like our perception of that is very different. That's how like we make up this thing we call reality. But also, you know, to the dynamics of when you're thinking about like these core fears and core desires of the let's say antagonist or whatever, the villain, what have you, you know, when we look at it in one view when we're younger, maybe not younger, but we see one perspective, and then we shift perspective just like a little bit, we nudge it, and then it's like a completely different vista opens up. I don't know, I find that fascinating when it comes like working on villains. It's just how do you twist it and make it get on you, because again, it's like you get older and you're like, yeah, I kind of agree with what he's might not be the right way to solution it, but he's got a point.
He sees the problem, right?
Yeah.
Like he sees the problem, and maybe like the villain is the tip of the spear of the person that's willing to do something about it, like a Thanos, right? If not him, who was going to do it? Yeah. And I think you bring up a really good point about like shifting the perspective. I feel like when using the Enneagram to develop your main character or your cast, or like make up the cast itself or the ensemble, it's showing the audience the vista, like the complex inner vista that the villain has or the main character that makes them do what they did. And I feel like that's when we get into the situations of like, you love him but you hate him at the same time, and it drives that inner conflict within yourself, because you can start to understand that character or that human conflict around why they're doing what they're doing, and it makes it for like a much more compelling reason beyond like, I'm doing evil to do evil. It's like, no, I'm annihilating half the world because the other half won't survive without this half being gone, and it's like the most ugly thing to do, but if I don't do it, we're all going to be annihilated.
Something that you mentioned, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a video called Something of Story. It's by Andrew Stanton, who worked at Pixar. He made Finding Nemo. I forgot the other Pixar movie he made, but he's up there with like, you know, Brad Bird and Pete Docter and all the like the core brain group at Pixar in its early days. But he did a TED Talk a couple years about storytelling, which is fascinating. It's like a 20-minute TED Talk. Go and find it, or we'll link it in the show notes. And they were talking about with Toy Story, they couldn't figure out Woody, because like he's this likable sheriff, all the toys look up to him, you know, he's this, you know, great guy. So it was hard to kind of make him into like the villain character. And one of the things he said was, you know, when Buzz shows up and kind of like he becomes a new kid on the block and everyone's subtracting him, he was like, Woody becomes bad only if he's not the top toy, something to that effect. And I don't know, just from like a storytelling perspective, like tying it to Enneagram and all that, like it's very interesting how, you know, you can take these concepts and put them into a character and then shift it a little bit, and you get a whole different dynamic. And that's why, you know, the story kind of gels there. Yeah, it's I don't want to ruin the experience of trying to speak for Andrew, but like, it's like Something of Story, TED Talk, Andrew Stanton, wonderful piece of like just breaking down just how they approach storytelling and characters and making them like believable and feel like three-dimensional, and, you know, like, oh, okay, you can kind of like relate to that. So yeah, it was very interesting, the science that they put behind that, because I feel like that's what it is. You know, we're scientists and chemists, and, you know, mixing all these different formulas and potions together to create, you know, this shared experience of storytelling.
100%.
Yeah.
I think another interesting thing is like when we think about let's say like Woody from Toy Story, like what type he is, I feel like I go towards like a few things, but then it also depends on like what he's running from at its core. And I think in different situations or in different activities, he gets triggered in different ways. And I feel like that is true for humans as well. Like I was saying, we might have like type 8 or type 3 as our primary, but we'll have like other types like closely following. And I think it flavors our reaction when it comes to different events. Like I have type 8 in me as well and type 1 pretty close by. And so there are sometimes like situations that I think are this is right, this is wrong, you just need to follow the way that it is. Or something is like kind of restricting me or challenging my sense of agency, and I go hard the other way because my type 8 is kind of getting triggered. So I think it's not always that like it's one way or another. Your primary type is the only way that you'll react to certain things. I think that the other aspects of the 9 types within you can inspire like a different response based on what that fear is.
And something too that I think is tricky, or at least in my mindset, since I'm working on like manga, and so just the comparatively to a prose novel, unless a manga is like a one shot, which is typically around like 60 pages. A novel, you can sit with the characters for however many hours it takes to read through that book, but in a manga, you usually get it chapter by chapter, so it's a slow build up.
Ooh.
And so one of the challenges is like it can be really jarring if your character does something out of character, even though if you look at the entire arc, it makes sense because of the different reactions. And when I say, for example, you have a character who's like ethos, like they don't kill no matter what, and then the situation, the story happens to where they end up killing someone. You're like, well, they wouldn't do that. It can be challenging to make that premise believable if you sold your audience on the fact like this character just has like a principle like not killing. So like how do you, but again, at the end of the day, we're thinking as human, in the human experience is like that could be any one of us. We could have this ethos like I don't kill, and then you like going back to Dexter, it could be you have this certain ethos, but something may trigger to where you go down that road. So it's always interesting, how do you add these other, let's say like if you focus on the 9 primary types, and that's who they are through and through. But then, like you said, contextual situations change within the plot story of the characters, causes them to maybe slip into, type 1 or type 9 or whatever. How do you believe, add that in there to where it feels organic and not just like, why is this character, suddenly doing
Seriously.
this? So I think that's like a storytelling thing too, is like, how do we, figure out different ways to approach that? I don't know. Do you have any, have you thought about that? Do you have any suggestions for the audience of, maybe when thinking about building characters, how to also add in these other kind of like secondary personality factors that may change, like you said, depending upon the situation, to where it feels organic and not just like, very contrived?
Yeah. I feel like your question is making me think about growth and stress patterns with the types, right? Because like we generally want to have some sort of character arc for the character, even if it ends up being flat, and we design them that way, but it's done with intention. And I feel like you bring up a really good point that these different mediums are going to like show progression in ways that we can't compare apples to apples to one another. Like a novel, you can read a novel for like 4 hours to like 10 hours or however long that novel is and really get in the character's head, because we're depending on the POV as well, to kind of illustrate why they're having a change of heart, or why they're sticking with course, or why they're regressing in their ways and maybe becoming an unhealthier type because of the things that are happening around them. Whereas like with yours, it's like a very like visually read medium, and so like what events are you going to pick out that kind of trigger them to think or grow differently?
Yep.
And which ones are the most impactful to show? Because we're not, I'm assuming that we are not going to be, it depends, but like we might not be in that character's head continuously. And it's also like a matter of, I think, like showing the progression of their thinking patterns as they go. So like, is there a certain number of events that happen that make Ezra or whatever character go like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe I didn't have it right at all. And kind of, I feel like we have to show that pivot point for them to go to like the next phase or like regress or something like that.
100%. And it's funny because now that I'm thinking about it, I recently watched Transformers 1, like the past like week or so. Terrible marketing for the movie. Because the marketing, we can do a whole episode about like design and marketing for projects, and maybe we can. But, you know, I think we both agree there's just way too many sequels and reboots in today's world, because that just seems to be the flavor of the month. And so when Transformers 1 came out, I was like, cool. I honestly wanted to see a Transformers project that didn't exist on Earth. Kind of at the beginning of Dark of the Moon, where they like that War for Cyber. Like, I wanted just robots on robot slaughter. And so when they came out with Transformers 1, I was like, well, it's a kids movie now. You know, it's going to be toned down. You know, it's not going to have that Transformers violence that I just like, that robot on robot crime that I love so much. But I was honestly shocked. It was a very well done movie, but the marketing just completely just pissed it away. But it happens like that for Megatron. Spoilers here. You see his character in this one dynamic, and then, you know, through the happenings of, you know, how Cybertron kind of, you know, falls off the cliff. I won't say falls off the cliff, but you know, the tensions build up, and there's this climactic point, and you see that change in Megatron is like, whoa. Like, at first he was, you know, good guy, and then, you know, you see that switch get flipped, and you're like, whoa. Like, dude went from 0 to 100, but it's just because he was so leaning in the one direction and hope and optimism on that he completely was just like, all right, I'm done with that. Like, villain arc initiated forever. Like, there's no going back, because what it cost us and everything.
I think the other key thing that you just brought up is that the stakes have to matter to that character in order to make a shift, right? Like, it can't just be like, my ice cream cone got knocked over and this is why I turned to villainy. It has to be something. It has to be something, unless they're it sounds personal, but the stakes have to matter to that character. So unless that character is like born from like ice cream cone parents or something like that, and we just like literally killed their family or their kin, then yeah, like knocking over an ice cream cone is unlikely to matter to that type. But like in your example of what was going on with the with Megatron, something bad enough had to happen in order for him to flip the switch and do something else in an extreme way that he felt would still satisfy his core fear or core desire.
Yeah.
I think the other key thing that you just brought up is that the stakes have to matter to that character in order to make a shift, right? Like, it can't just be like, my ice cream cone got knocked over and this is why I turned to villainy. It has to be something. It has to be something, unless they're it sounds personal, but the stakes have to matter to that character. So unless that character is like born from like ice cream cone parents or something like that, and we just like literally killed their family or their kin, then yeah, like knocking over an ice cream cone is unlikely to matter to that type. But like in your example of what was going on with the with Megatron, something bad enough had to happen in order for him to flip the switch and do something else in an extreme way that he felt would still satisfy his core fear or core desire.
Yeah. I was like, bravo. I was like, personally, and the Spidey fans will hate me for this one, I think it's a better movie than Into the Spider-Verse. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Whoa.
The first one was good. I like the first one better than the second. The second one's a love letter to Spidey fans, but I'm not. There's too much Spider-Man content. Sorry, guys.
That is spicy. That is spicy take.
But I thought comparatively to Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, I think Transformers 1 was better than Across the Spider-Verse in general, from like the storytelling dynamics and whatnot. So yeah, it blew me away. I was like, oh, this movie's really, really good.
Yeah, so we basically just talked about like why we would use Enneagram to make compelling main characters and villains, but I think it's also really powerful to make these Enneagrams work together. There's going to be some Enneagram types or combinations that are more explosive together than others. Like, I can like even thinking about in media right now, the Batman versus Joker. Why do we think that works really well? I think the Batman is your type 1, your justice, the reformer kind, like this is right, this is wrong, I don't kill, kind of thing, versus the Joker, who literally exists to make chaos for Batman, right? I think that Joker might be more like a type 7, and these two are like oil and water, if you will. And we like to see these guys fight because they're just so polar opposite, right? And so if you can think about your cast of characters or your team or your family or your squad that you're putting into your work as not just like an individual type, like, oh, so and so is a type 8, I'm going to put this type 1 here, I'm going to put this type 7, but you thought about them disparately. I feel like that's a little bit harder versus if you make this squad intentionally, you think about how the tension is going to push and pull between these in different scenarios, then you can put them into even stickier binds that they have to confront their deepest fear, or what they really want to gain, or like kind of like the true person that is inside the, like underneath the mask for each of them, right?
Yeah. Assembling a cast, I would definitely say, can also be very difficult because you have to look at your characters on an individual basis, and then how do you string them together to be cohesive. And I think that going back to what you said earlier about the medium, it's like when you have live actors, they can inject, their own personality and really transform and figure out how to do that gelling in real time. When you're writing characters, you almost don't get that real-time feedback to where, let's say you write Althea or write Ezra, like Ezra doesn't do anything unless like I sort of command him to do it, until the story gets to a point to where you're writing from that character's perspective like 1,000%, but sometimes it can be difficult to get deep enough into their body to have them kind of operate on their own level. And then it's like, okay, cool, now I'm not writing it as the author of this character, I'm writing as this character, and this character has its own autonomy. I think
I brought this up before, but I really enjoy Dungeons and Dragons because it's role playing, right? So I feel like it forces you to kind of exemplify that character and really think about like, what would Althea do, what would Ezra do in this situation, and respond to their own voice. I think you bring up a really good point that it is difficult to kind of inhabit that, especially if it's not something that's super familiar to you. Like I think I think that there is some types that are like the last ones for me. I identify the least with that type. I do have a little bit of it in me, but their core fear isn't really what drives me as strongly as my primary one. And I think in those situations, I start leaning on the people that I know in real life that I feel like are exemplary of those types, right? Like I know a type 9. I know a type 7, I know a type 5. And like, what would that person do if faced in this situation? What have I seen them historically do? And why are they doing it that way? And I think when we're faced with conflict, it's really easy for us to paint the villain, the main character, or other characters into a corner of like, well, that's stupid, or like they just did something that was completely nonsensical. But I think it's a much more interesting question to pose to the audience and also to others in real life of like, why would this reasonable person commit such an act, right? Even though we think at surface level it's really unreasonable what you just did. But if we were to pretend that they were reasonable people, why did they do what they did just now? And I feel like that's how we have to approach each of our characters. Like, why did you just knock over that kid's ice cream cone, or whatever the more dire version of it is? Why did you just annihilate half of the universe? Yeah. Right? Like, why did you do such an unreasonable act?
Is the ice cream cone in the room with us? Is this like a villain? Did you watch Lilo and Stitch recently?
No, I did actually watch Lilo and Stitch recently, and that poor fat guy with like the ice cream cone constantly getting knocked off. Felt really bad.
I was going to say something too when you were talking about the characters, but I lost the thought. So I guess we can move on to the next topic.
I'm sure it will come up.
Yeah, 100%. With world building, did you want to cover some of like Enneagram and world building? Do you feel like we already kind of canvassed that already?
When you say Enneagram and world building, do you mean like how like the characters shape the environment around them or respond to it?
I guess so, yeah. didn't really think of it in that way, but I could see, is that
How
something?
did you see it?
Oh, I was completely blind. I was just curious as to the way I view story, and I would assume every writer or creator, you look at it 360 holistically. So you're looking into this massive universe. So not only does Enneagram apply to the characters, but how could that also maybe apply to the world dynamics, whether it's other races or creatures
Oh,
or environments, cities, other
that's a
factions.
really interesting question. Honestly, I wonder if we could think about it like this. Maybe not for the setting itself, but maybe what happened to a body of people collectively. If we had a shared trauma, let's say, COVID is a really good example. I would wonder how COVID has shaped a majority or a big body of people's interpretations of certain things or their triggers towards certain things, right?
Yeah.
I could also see the same more extreme example of war or PTSD from war. How does a army as a collective react to something versus a completely different collective of people that was shielded from war? So maybe there is some sort of shared trigger that happens that as a collective they all feel very type 1. They were the forefront of justice, right?
Okay.
And so they all have that same hive mind mentality of this is what we're doing, this is why it's right, and that kind of thing. I could see that
Transformers one.
applying.
Transformers one.
Transformers
It's in
one.
there. I'll probably watch it tonight because it was so good. It was you kind of see all these. I was looking at it. I'm not the super in depth into the lore of Transformers, but it is very inspirational. I grew up on the Beast Wars and Beast Machines during the mid '90s era, so I think the second or third gen of it. But some of that same dynamic, you kind of see, how their populace was just structured, and then kind of what lies were sold to this group versus the other, and creates these sort of factional tensions. And then when all that kind of blows up towards in the movie, then you kind of see. So I'm gonna rewatch it with that lens in mind because I find that very, very interesting.
That's a really good exercise to do, and I didn't even think about applying it on a wider scale, but I think it 100% makes sense because the settings are characters in themselves, right? And I think that we can't ignore background societal things, even if we're not giving them a name, oh, that's Julie and that's Sue and that's Mary or something like that in the background of the book. We can just classify them as the crowd, right? And the world is going to react in kind to what your character is doing. And I guess what sort of ethos does that crowd or that world have about your character, and why is that, right? And it can make it a little bit more realistic. It's we aren't hunting witches just to hunt witches. We're hunting witches because our ancestors were at war with witches or something like that. So it inspires a little bit more depth as to what your world is doing around your main character and vice versa.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up witches. I was thinking about Harry Potter when you were just describing that. I was how do the world of wizards, how do they, if you had to put them in Enneagram, what would collectively their dynamic be versus the Muggles, or maybe this country types of wizards and witches versus another. So in the Pottermore verse is very, very interesting.
Yeah, that is super interesting to think about. I wish that there was more out there of different cultures and the way that they interact in the Pottermore universe. I think that would be really cool to see the Harry Potter setting in different countries and stuff.
Yeah,
and how it's used and how it looks.
Maybe on the games it would be interesting to see, with going to the Pottermore, the wizards school in Uganda, or the one in and whatnot. I remember real quick before we kind of get into the closing, the Harry Potter World Cup Quidditch game on the PlayStation 2, and I put so many hours into that as the American team. Oh man, the game was killer because it was the only game I think that you could play kind of other wizards from around the world. So I just enjoyed that, the way that game did it. The new one, I'm
that's really sick.
It's mid, but that the PS2 GameCube era of Quidditch World Cup, that's a banger.
Quidditch World Cup,
it's a banger, yeah. So regards to the bonus prompt, was that for us or was that for the crowd?
So the bonus prompt here is to share your own Enneagram type and how it affects your writing or character preference. Do you want to go first?
I'll let you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. I'll go first. So some preface here. I am an Enneagram type 3 and followed by a type 8 and then a type 1. So I feel like I identify with those types really strongly, and I can see where they're coming from, and sometimes they just like subconsciously influence what I'm doing really really often, and different things trigger different aspects of my typography. The way it affects my writing or character preference is I think that I tend to lean towards characters that I can write and understand really well because I know what it feels like to be that, right? So I definitely have a type 8. I definitely have a type 1. I don't have a type 3 character in the book at the moment. And I feel like that was my comfort zone of starting with what was known and then starting to expand a little bit more. So I do have someone who's like a type 7, for instance. I don't identify as type 7 strongly myself, but I can also now better knowing the Enneagram and at least understanding how my core 3 types work and how it like manifests itself in day to day. I can also share some, I guess, sympathy or empathy with other types and why they might be running from or to other things. Now, when I look at media, watch things, read things, I feel like I can start to identify their type and then kind of empathize with why they're doing what they're doing, because I understand the type 2 just really desperately wants to help people, and this is literally the difference between them feeling like they matter to somebody versus like they are useless, right? And this is why they are doing everything possible under the sun to help each other out or to people please, for instance. That's not my same motivation, but I can understand theirs now. So yeah, I would say that it has affected my writing in a way that I think more about character typography whenever I'm reading something, watching something, and my initial instinct is to go from something very familiar to myself to something that's less familiar. How about you?
Yeah, I can see the logic in approaching it from that. I think a little bit of the opposite in the sense that I try not to write as my self-ascribed type A.
Yeah. I admire that.
For several reasons. One, I think it's just due to the nature of the story and the character. Like I want to write the character. I envision him not as that, as who I am necessarily. So I choose not to try and like write in that way. It would be very easy because like I get it. So trying to write from a different perspective and put forth a different argument with this character, also he has to adopt the Enneagram dynamics that is better suited towards that argument versus the way I would approach it as like like a type.
Yeah.
Like I'm so heavily weighted type 8. Like I don't even know. Maybe 1 or type 2 is the helper. Is that type 2? Yeah. So maybe like 1 and then like 1% type 1 and then like the other percent. So I'm like what 98% type 8 and then like the 1% and the 1% is like type 1 and type 2 potentially. So yeah, and also I think you mentioned the individualist is another type.
Oh, the type 5? Yes.
Yeah, the individualist is type 5. Okay, so and remind me, what's the core fear, desire of the individualist? Because I feel like also as a type 8, very strong individual, but I don't know if I like, make up that DNA of a type 5.
A type 5 is someone who fears the lack of knowledge being the reason why they're going to get hurt. So they might turn really inwards. Honestly, I think like Mr. Robot's main character that Rami plays.
Elliot.
Yeah, Elliot, I think might be a type 5, like becoming completely inwards and very analytical about what's going on in order to kind of find their way through the world is one way that I could see it.
Okay, so when I hear individuals, I think of someone who does what they can to stand out necessarily, but am I getting incorrect here? Like individualist is more so.
Oh, I'm so sorry. The individualist. I'm sorry. I got him mixed up with the investigator. The investigator is the intelligence person. They fear being helpless or incapable. The individualist is someone who doesn't have an identity or significance. Like who are they in the world?
Okay, I guess I was thinking of
Yeah,
a
yeah,
different.
yeah.
Okay, because when I hear individualist, I think of someone who's like, I'm standing out, like I'm making myself stand out in that way. So that's not an individualist type,
It
or
is. It is. It is
okay.
exactly that. They fear not having an identity, so they want a way to stand out,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So yeah, yeah. This is like your artist trope of like this is my like painful past, but it makes me who I am, right? Like
Mm,
look at my wound and know that it made me who I am today. And they don't necessarily seek to cover it up. They seek that it is an aspect of them that makes them unique.
gotcha. There's a lot I could say on that. We might have to save it for part two
Yeah.
of the Enneagram. But yeah, before we close it out here, put in the chat, what you think, is your favorite or most aligned Enneagram type. Let us know how you guys approach, using Enneagram to create characters and believable storytelling and worlds and things like that. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, drop kick the like button, all that fancy stuff. And we will be back for another episode.